Welcome to the Office of Early Childhood's webinar, Women in History, Educating Young Children, Reflections from the Past, Shining Light in the Present, Enlightening Forward Movement. Passing it over to Diana, who will give interpretation instructions.
Hello everyone. Buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Diana Reyes y daré instrucciones sobre cómo acceder a los servicios de traducción para el seminario web. En la parte inferior de la pantalla, haga clic en el globo que dice traducción y luego seleccione español o SP. A continuación, puede silenciar el idioma original. También voy a poner las instrucciones en el chat. Gracias por acompañarnos.
Now passing it over to the Commissioner of the Office of Early Childhood, Beth Bai.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Lorna, thank you so much. Diana, thank you so much. This is exciting to be here today with this topic. I think it's particularly relevant. Well, in Connecticut, March is a month we celebrate women all the time because our Huskies won last night and are off to their 31st consecutive Sweet 16. I think about that is excellence over time. Those women are amazing. Back in 1980, when probably Elsa and I were playing basketball, Elsa played basketball, the idea that you would sell out an arena for women's basketball was hard to imagine. I know I would go to Madison Square Garden to watch the AIAW championships. But when we think about women making progress, I think of the arc of women's basketball and how it has gone from an afterthought to now rivaling. Last year, there were more people that watched the women's Final Four than the men's. Just the way that people appreciate women's skills. I think we have a higher hill to climb in childcare because of the history behind the underappreciation of women in childcare. And I put a resource in the chat that the National Women's Law Center has. And one of the hard parts when you work on early childhood and lifting us up to the incredible place we belong in society for our role in shaping the future. One of the challenges is we are what you call a gender segregated profession. And research shows that there's a clear penalty for working in female-dominated professions, whether you're a man or a woman. So the research shows that they're paid less than occupations where men dominate, or even in occupations where there's a gender balance. For example, although the work done by janitors and building cleaners is highly similar to those done by maids and housekeeping cleaners, the median hourly wage is 11% higher for the men than the women in those professions, even though the jobs are pretty much the same. So we have work to do, but today we have some panelists that are going to really open our eyes. And what I'm going to ask you to do today is to pay attention. And going forward, pay attention to some of our own biases. Sometimes I know there are men and women on this call, but sometimes I feel like even we as women tend to hold up women who are in more traditionally gender balanced or male dominated professions. Whereas people like teachers and nurses and childcare providers, we think of them and we get a warm feeling, but I think we need to look at them as heroes in our culture, much the way we do other professions, holding up our society every day, supporting parents every day. So just think about your own biases, about what you value when you look up and respect someone. I look at the panel we have today. These are some people I respect more than anyone on the planet and the work that they've done to advance high quality early childhood. Even, I see Rhonda on the work that the Child Care Union has done to bring the stories and the value of family childcare to the fore in Connecticut. So I just ask you, listen today, and as you leave, lean into appreciating women-dominated professions, women's work, I know, I'll tell you one quick story, then I'm going to introduce Elsa. When I was in high school, I was a pretty good athlete. I was president of student council. I was a good student. And I taught at a child care center. I was a toddler teacher just down the street from where I grew up. And I'd done a lot of babysitting. And I was pushing a stroller with 8 babies. I had another staff member with me, you know, those big wagons where the kids sit around. And a woman I used to babysit pulled over her big Mercedes as I was walking down the sidewalk and said, "Beth Howley, how can you be working in daycare?" And I'll never forget it. And it was a moment of clarity for me about not just the misunderstanding, but yes, I was working in daycare and I knew I was making a difference. But that was a woman who was a feminist, who's basically saying to me, how could you do this? How could you work in a women-dominated profession? So today, let's appreciate our women-dominated professions. And I can think of no one better to kick us off than Elsa Jones. Elsa, we've known each other, I would say, at least 30 years. Elsa is a child development specialist and advocate, and she's worked in the field for more than 37 years, starting at Head Start as a teacher and director. And then since 86, you've been doing a lot of different things. Our paths cross very open, very regularly. And I know you've done work for local, state, regional, national organizations. You do great work in developmentally appropriate practice, assessment, teamwork, supervision. And I mean, Elsa, I will say some of your trainings I've attended about cultural competency, diversity, equity, and inclusion have been remarkable. You have a way, because of your family's history, you are, I think, at least third generation civil rights activist. And you have some pictures and stories that nobody else does, which gives you a perspective that nobody else has. And you have chosen your civil rights work to be in this field. And we honor you today, asking you to speak to us, but we're just so honored that you would give us your time. And I know you have 2 young adults. Our kids are about the same age, and we often, when we see each other, we will talk about that. So thank you for your passion. Thank you for your commitment to quality and this work we're doing, trying so hard to bring the CSCU along and help our staff in the field have access to higher education classes in ways that meet their demanding schedules and needs. So appreciate you being here. I get to step out now and take it over, Elsa.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Bai. I truly appreciate your generous, kind introduction. Yes, we do go back 3 decades at least, probably. But I remember first meeting you in a child care center. I think it was Trinity. And it's just been a blessed experience just knowing you. And I just want to thank you for the tremendous work that you do every day, that you put your heart into it, your soul into it. And you have been treading this pathway, treading this mill for all these years. I can't thank you enough. Thank you. I'm honored to be here today. Thank you. So hello, everyone. And I just want you to know that I did have some technical difficulty. I was kicked out of the meeting a minute ago, so I'm holding my iPhone in my hand, and if it looks a little unsteady, that's because I'm holding the iPhone. I want to thank you all again for this opportunity to come and speak with you this afternoon. I am honored, humbled to have been asked to speak on this significant occasion, Women's History Month. It's my intent to return the honor to you, the Office of Early Childhood, and all who are participating in today's webinar. So I'm here to share my thoughts and reflections on the theme, Women in History, Educating Young Children, Reflections from the Past, Shining Light in the Present, Enlightening Forward Movement. It's remarkable work that we do. And I must share that this responsibility to come and talk with you today has caused me to engage in critical reflection, my own self-assessment, tapping of my own zone of proximal development, my own ZPD, and utilization of Bloom's taxonomy of higher order thinking skills, which I like to say RUAAEC. Remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, create. I encourage you that as I share my thoughts and reflections, please think about your own experiences, how you got started in this wonderful field of early childhood education. Who helped you along the way? Who have mentored you? Who has mentored you? And who have you mentored? Who has helped you to become the professional that you are? So again, we will reflect on the past. Who lit the torch? What was their fight? And then shining lights today. How are we carrying those torches that maybe were passed on to us, those batons? And then thinking about forward movement. How are we helping others? And when I think about others, I'm thinking about other early childhood professionals, center-based teachers, family child care educators, public school teachers teaching young children. But I also think about, first and foremost, the children's first teachers, their families who are their first teachers. So again, I ask you to reflect on your own careers, your own early childhood education trajectory. How did you get here? Who helped pave your way? Women's History Month started in 1987, and many of you may know the history of how this got started. Let us think about how we honor the immeasurable contributions of women to our nation's progress. Women's History Month is more than a yearly tradition. It's a powerful call to action. It is an opportunity to recognize the vital role of women across all sectors and reaffirm that we have this collective commitment, a commitment to gender equality, women's empowerment, to do what is right for children, for each other, to uphold the code of ethics. But with Women's History Month, we want to make sure that we are working together and that we do our best to make sure that children, families, and ourselves, that we are not left behind. So when you think about a celebration, there's some other celebrations that I just want to highlight. Many of you may be familiar with the Children's Defense Fund. In 2023, the Children's Defense Fund celebrated its golden anniversary, 50 years. 50 years for advocating for young children. 50 years for making sure that they were helping children and families to have voices that were heard. So we celebrate the Children's Defense Fund. And Mary Wright Edelman is the founder of the Children's Defense Fund. We also celebrate this year that Head Start is going to celebrate, or is celebrating, its diamond anniversary. 60 years. 60 years ago, Head Start commenced. It was launched as a summer project, 8-week summer project. And look, 60 years later. And you may be familiar with certain people across the years. One woman who comes to my mind is Commissioner Helen Taylor, who I had the privilege of meeting many years ago. She has passed away, but I just remember meeting her. And it was at a National Head Start conference. When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, I remember she stood up there at the podium, and she said, "We know that in Head Start, our performance standards say that meals should be served family style." And she caused an uproar because she then said, whose family is it that we are talking about when we say family style? And her point there was that we need to honor all families. So not everyone is going to eat meals the way you eat in your home, but we must know about the significance of cultural diversity and appreciate cultural diversity. And then there is an upcoming celebration, which many of you may be familiar with. The National Association for the Education of Young Children will be celebrating its centennial birthday in 2026. And we know the significance of NAEYC. I say NIAC, others say NACY, but all that it has done as a professional organization and how it has helped us to grow even stronger. So again, We are celebrating Women's History Month, the Children's Defense Fund, Head Start's Diamond Year, and NIAC Centennial Celebration. You may have some of your own celebrations, so feel free to put them into the chat box. Unfortunately, I'm not able to read them because I'm holding my phone, but please go ahead and speak your own celebrations. I love to hear your voices. So, why are you here? I hope to celebrate. Reflect on your own journeys as early childhood educators. Reflect on how not only are you helping the children, their foundational years from birth to 5, birth to 8, but also how are you partnering with their families? Because as we know, again, they are their children's first teachers, and we must have these reciprocal, respectful relationships. We could go to the early childhood accreditation standards for early learning programs. We can look at standards for higher education accreditation, but we must always be working in partnership with families. The National Association for Family Childcare has standards and guidelines. Again, as we celebrate children, as we celebrate the work that we're doing, please also celebrate the families. I see we're celebrating Hispanic Month. Thank you. I did see that. So, in starting the celebration, some of you may be familiar with this message that comes from the African Maasai warriors. And I hope that I'm going to say it correctly. If I do not say it correctly, maybe someone will let me know by putting it into the chat box. Kasirian Ingera. Kasirian Ingera. Oh, March Madness, I see. Kasirian Ingera is a message that the African Maasai warriors give to each other when they greet each other on the road. And it means, and how are the children? And how are the children? If we were all together, I would ask us to say it all together. And how are the children? And ideally, what we want is to hear that the children are doing well. The children are okay. In today's time, what we're living right now, if someone were to say to you, Kasirian Ingera, and how are the children? What would your answer be? Are the children okay? Not all children are okay, we know that. Not all adults are okay. Is society well today? So I want to share with you from the Children's Defense Fund this message about a boat on a storm, a boat on the sea in a storm. And before I tell the story, though, I just want us to think about, we've come through the COVID pandemic. That was a storm. And as we know that early childhood educators were essential to the workforce, they were essential, in terms of the economy as we went through the pandemic, which was not many years ago. And we are still living the aftermath of the COVID pandemic, correct? But prior to the pandemic, we were essential. We've always been essential for the early childhood workforce and ensuring that, we are supporting the country. We're supporting, for families, for parents to be able to work. We have been there supporting all. So during the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, and today, the work that we're doing. Now we're living in a time when, for me, every time I hear breaking news, it just hits me. And I am feeling that breaking news is really breaking souls. That's how it hits me with much of this breaking news. So I ask you, how are you doing? Kasirian and Gira, how are you doing? I know it's and how are the children. I don't know how to say and how are the adults. But how are you? How are you really? We have burnout, we have fatigue, we have compassion fatigue, we have change fatigue. And as I say this, I want us to think about, as early childhood educators, we are always observing and assessing young children's development. So when you think about young children, the domains, social, emotional, cognitive, and we look at how they understand social studies, what's happening in the world, in our lives. Again, think about if you were to assess yourselves, your own development. How are you doing today? socially, emotionally, cognitively, in these social studies times that we're living. The realities of today's world are really shaking people, and they're shaking our families, they're shaking children, correct? We are seeing dismantling of programs, policies, safety nets. We see the attack on diversity, equity, inclusion. And we know as early childhood professionals, we believe and we teach anti-bias education for young children. Anti-bias education, 4 goals that were researched by Louise Derman Sparks and Julie Olson Edwards decades ago that talk about identity, diversity, justice, and activism. But there are attacks on diversity, equity, inclusion that we're living. We know recently, just last week, the attempt to dismantle the Department of Education, which was created in 1979 to ensure equal access for all Americans to educational opportunities of high quality. Why are they dismantling the Department of Education? Why? We know that knowledge is power. We know that the Department of Ed is so important to families and children to ensure, again, that everyone gets the quality education and the services that they need. We also know that NIAC, as I said, celebrating its centennial anniversary, has given us guidelines, the Code of Ethics, which are the responsibilities to children, families, colleagues, community, and society. It's a living document that in our profession, we adhere to it. I really believe that the Code of Ethics needs to be shared with all businesses, with everyone throughout this country, because everyone needs to be living the Code of Ethics. And then we also know advancing equity in early childhood education, the position statement, right? Sometimes I feel like what is happening is that it's more of advancing inequity in early childhood education. And we cannot let that happen. We cannot. And then there are threats to other early childhood programs and services funding. As we know, the threats to Head Start, again, which is celebrating 60 years this year. Head Start always has focused on comprehensive services, the whole child and the whole family. So if we deprive these services from young children, birth to 8, what happens to them socially, emotionally, cognitively? If we starve children, food, all the benefits that they need, what happens? We are hurting the current generation and the next generation. And for me as a Black woman, I do feel that, this resembles what my ancestors lived. Slavery, segregation, Jim Crow era, dismantling Department of Education, not wanting people to have knowledge. Knowledge is power. So we're living the current day system that denies, eradicates, erases the contributions of people of color. We're in a storm. I promise you, I said it's a celebration. I'm going to take it up. We find ourselves at a crossroads in our boardrooms, at the water fountains. There's talks about should we re-examine, should we revise standards, language? Should we look at, again, accreditation standards, policies? Should we respond to all these attacks? And I'm reminded of Mimi Brodsky-Chenfeld, who I had the privilege of meeting at one of the NIAC conferences many years ago. And she wrote it was a book, Teaching in the Key of Life, I think is what it's called, Teaching in the Key of Life. And she had a little story in there that says, there's a wolf at your door that's trying to blow your house down, right? And she said, we cannot give in to the wolves at the door. So again, as we think about what is happening around us, this is Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory, where we have all these systems circling around us. What's happening in our immediate lives, what's happening when we interact with others, we bring the children to the child care centers, what goes on between the children, the teachers, the directors, and the families, and then what happens in our own communities where we live, what happens, when we read the news, the breaking news, and the time in which we're living. All these systems surround us. But I ask us to think about How do we come boldly in our roles as essential early childhood professionals? You're essential, I'm essential, and we have history to draw on that will gird us, that will prepare us for the future. So whatever your role is, whether you're a teacher, assistant teacher, director, funder, whatever your different roles are, consultants, health providers, we all are in this boat together. So here's the story I want to share. When we think about a storm coming through the pandemic, right? Coming boldly through the storm. And I share this story that was told by Marian Wright Edelman, the founder of the Children's Defense Fund. She tells the story. Excuse me, I just need a glass of water. I apologize. She tells the story that the Children's Defense Fund's logo, and I'm sorry that I'm not able to show it to you, but some of you may be familiar with it. It's this colorful boat that is on the sea and it's being tossed. And there's the sun above it, and then there's the message above it. The logo comes from a drawing that Marian Wright Edelman saw in a gallery window during a walk through Cambridge, Massachusetts. And she said that was nearly 50 years ago when she wrote this. This was after her family had moved to the Boston area, where CDF had its beginning. The artwork was by 5-year-old Maria Cote, and it shows a bright sun shining on a small boat with a tiny sail adrift on a very wide sea. Above the boat, in Maria's handwriting, 5-year-old Maria, is the ancient fisherman's prayer. Dear Lord, be good to me. The sea is so wide and my boat is so small. In 1974, when CDF completed its first report, I asked permission from Maria's mother to use the drawing on the cover. Marian Wright Edelman asked for permission. A few years later, when someone suggested that CDF ought to have a logo, I looked at Maria's drawing hanging above my desk and realized it reflected CDF's mission more truthfully than any abstract piece prepared by the graphic arts firm that they had consulted with. Maria's mother agreed to our trademarking her daughter's piece. And she says, children's tiny lifeboats. Thank you, Commissioner Bai. Thank you so much. Children's tiny lifeboats are always so small and in need of protection as they navigate their way through our world. But the metaphor of children adrift in dangerous seas feels painfully literal when they are caught in actual storms, right? And that is how we feel, caught in a storm. But think about little Maria, 5-year-old Maria. She had a voice, right? Often we see children who are victims, but we help children to have their voices. As early childhood educators, every child should be supported to have the voice, to speak it, and then to have a platform to use their voices. Marian Wright Edelman gave that little girl, Maria, a voice. But not only did she give her a voice, you saw the relationship, how she engaged with the mother. So it was the family, right? Supporting families as first teachers and helping this child to have her voice. I wonder where Maria is today. I wonder where she is, and I wonder where her mother is. But again, every day we engage with young children. We're helping to mold their minds, cultivate their voices, give them platforms. And I remember years ago reading, I think this was on the CDF website, and it said, I don't know who coined this, who came up with this statement. What if the Defense Department had to hold a bake sale to fund the Defense Department and the schools? What if they got all the money they needed? So again, think about little Maria. And again, I thank you, Commissioner Bai, for showing the boat on the sea. I would like you to think now about, again, your own career paths. And as we think about celebrating this Women's History Month, but particularly women in early childhood education. And think about, again, the messages that you've received along your career path. The messages about you being a professional, do they come to you very strongly? I heard Commissioner Bai's statement, and I had a very similar experience. I was told when I was straight out of grad school with my master's degree and just so eager to be a Head Start director. I had 36 children every day, 18 in the morning, a half-hour lunch break, 18 in the afternoon. I was using my textbook knowledge. I had had lab school experiences at Wellesley College undergrad and at Tufts University as a grad student. I was ready. I was ready. And I remember someone saying to me, "Oh, wow, you're an early childhood teacher? You must do all those little cute finger plays all day long. How nice is that? And you must sing those little nursery rhyme songs." I also remember people telling me that you should become a real teacher, go get certified. But I will tell you, I truly practiced the code of ethical conduct with people when they made statements like that. Because if I said what was really on my mind, and if I used the words that I really would have liked to have said, no, I maintained my code of ethical conduct. But again, we do much more, as you all know. It's not cute little play. The play that we do is so intentional and so important for the development of every child, every child. And what I encourage you to do in your roles as early childhood educators, get families to play with you. Get families to play with you. One thing that I loved to do when I was teaching, when we were doing hand printing, I would tell parents, "I need your hands. Can you give me your hands?" And sometimes they'd look at me and said, "I'm off to work." I said, "We can wash your hands." And you know what was even more fun was when we did foot painting. And the parents would say, "You're not going to ask for my feet." And I said, "Oh, yes, I am." And again, some parents would take off socks and shoes. Some moms would take off their stockings and they would put their feet into the paint. And that, for me, was a great, prideful moment as an early childhood professional, that I had that relationship with parents. And beyond all that, the greatest joy was for the children to see their parents engaged with them. So think about the messages that you've received, messages along the way. And in preparing for this, I told you that I tapped my zone of proximal development. I did critical reflection. And I thought very seriously about what I learned in undergrad and grad school about who were the pioneers in the field and who, I learned about all the theorists, and I learned about the, curriculum, pedagogy, different practices, different philosophies. But what I didn't learn, and it dawned on me again doing this research, I didn't learn a lot about Native Americans, Black women, Hispanic women, Asian women, other women. I just did not learn about the diversity of people in our field, women. So I think it's very important, and I give that to you as an opportunity to continue growing, to learn about all the different diverse women who have contributed to this field along the way. So again, I've talked about Head Start. I talked about Helen Taylor. And again, think about that. And I also remember when meeting her, she also talked about there was a time when, it was a Head Start performance standard, and that by the time a child finishes Head Start, the child will know 10 letters of the alphabet. I think it was something like that. It was a performance standard. And there was a lot of buzz. There was a buzz going across the country. What 10 letters are we supposed to teach? And there were teachers who felt pressured that there had to be certain specific letters. And I remember Helen Taylor said very boldly, Helen Taylor said, "You will begin with the letters in their names," because that's what's most important for young children, to know their names and be proud of their names. So again, similar to the women of color, early childhood has been built on the backs of women of color. It's been built on the backs of women who are Caucasian, all people. But when we look at specifically, women of color who have not been respected in the field, who have not had their stories told, I encourage you to learn more about each other. I come boldly claiming and declaring I am an essential early childhood professional. And I encourage you to proudly state that in the chat. If you see yourself that way, thumbs up, give a heart, do something. Come boldly claiming you are an essential early childhood professional. We step out boldly on the shoulders of others, right, who have gone before us, who nurtured, cared, mentored, and even sacrificed so that we can be where we are today. And we all have a responsibility. Code of ethics, again, responsibility to the children, the families, to our colleagues, our employers, to other employees, to community and society. But we have this responsibility to tell our stories and to help others as we tell our stories. So I'm going to speak for a few more minutes about myself as an early childhood professional, but I'm going to start with myself as the mother of Natalia and Brian. And Commissioner Bai, thank you for making a comment about our children. No matter how old they get, we are their first teachers, their lifetime advocates, right? And I am so proud of my children, Natalia and Brian. Reflecting on Natalia, when she first had childcare, early care and education, it was Miss Mary, who was a registered nurse with the Nursing Association in Cincinnati. And they provided in-home early care and education. And back then, it was probably called in-home daycare. She came to my house twice a week, and she spent valuable time with Natalia while I went and did consulting work. And I remember coming home one day, and Miss Mary had this journal that was on my kitchen table. And I looked down at it. It had Natalia's name on it, and I was very curious about it. She had not told me about it, but because I saw it, she said, "This is a gift that I was planning to give to you." And she said, feel free to open it. And what I learned very quickly, that every day she had spent with Natalia, she was writing about Natalia's day. She was journaling. You can only imagine how that touched me. And one of the funniest statements that she had written down, Natalia's own words, was, "My mommy wears thumbtacks in her eyes. Do you? Does anybody know what thumbtacks in my eyes are? If you do, please put it into the chat box. I'll come back to it in a minute." Thumbtacks in her eyes. My mommy wears thumbtacks. I see someone's laughing. Yep, contact lenses, exactly. Thumbtacks. And then I remember my son, Brian. His first out-of-home early care and education experience was with Miss Nessa. Miss Nessa was a family child care educator who opened up her home to other families. And I wanted someone who was going to understand my culture. She was a Black woman. It was very important for me to have my son see himself and to see other children of color, but to see a Black family, that was nurturing the children. And I learned about Miss Nessa, and I remember the first day I left Brian, he was only just a little over a year old. I was still nursing. I was so eager to get back to him. And I arrived back early that day, and I asked, how was his day? And Miss Nessa said, "It was wonderful." And here I am thinking, he must have cried. He must have needed me. Oh, no, he was fine. And then she said, "But you forgot to tell us one very important thing." And I'm thinking, early childhood educational professor? No, I'm sorry, professional? What could I have forgotten to tell about my own son? I became a very defensive mother. And she said, "Well, we carried him around everywhere. We brought him upstairs to eat. We took him back downstairs. He napped. He was happy and all. And in the afternoon when he was playing, sitting in the middle of the floor, he looked across the room. And what do you think happened? He saw something he wanted, and he got up and he walked over to it. And what they told me was I had forgotten to tell them that he could walk." Oh, and it was that they had taken such great care holding him, taking him everywhere. And then they said he got up and he went for what he wanted. And I listened first to them. They said, "We were very concerned because we were afraid that might have been the first time he took his first steps." And they said, but as they watched him, they realized he had been walking all along, and that he just let them take him everywhere. So that was my story with family childcare, my first day with my son being in family childcare. And I give all kinds of congratulations and kudos to everyone, whether you are caring for children in your home, you're caring for children in centers, you're caring for children in public school, early care and education settings. The work you are doing is tremendous. So I applaud everybody. Thank you for letting me just talk a little bit about my own children. And then I'm going to move into my career trajectory, people who have played a role in my life. And I ask you to think about your own. So feel free to write about your own trajectory. How did you get to where you are? Because we celebrate you. I am the daughter, third generation of Baptist ministers in my family. And my father was a civil rights leader. Thank you, Commissioner Bai, with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I grew up understanding, and I'm going to share Proverbs 22:6, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. I learned at a very young age, and I knew that I have a lot of responsibility because of what my parents have given to me. So I come to this work, I come to where I am today, having had the Head Start experience, CDA advisor experience, working on federal longitudinal research projects, being a federal early Head Start and Head Start reviewer, being a higher education practicing professor, and being a NIAC commissioner for higher education accreditation, and also working with the Office of Early Childhood and Connecticut State Colleges and Universities on the Lab School Investments Initiative. I also am an activist, and I believe that many of you who may be here, you are early childhood activists. I did have a slide to show, but I'm not able to do that. It has me with my brother at 4, I was 2, and my mother and father. The story tells that we were on a picket line. We were boycotting at a store in New York. I'm from Brooklyn. And the newspaper article goes on to say, my father was leading the boycott because in the community, they were selling inferior products and they were not hiring the people who lived in the community. And in this story, it goes on to say that the police threatened to arrest the people who were boycotting. And that included arresting my 4-year-old brother and me. So when I say I'm coming boldly, since 2 years of age, I've been coming boldly on the shoulders of, and then I will speak about women. So please feel free to write the women in your lives who have helped you, whose shoulders you stand on. I think about my mother, Natalie Barkley Brown Jones. She was the first person of color and then the first woman of color to be the art curator for American Telephone and Telegraph in New York. And my mother grew up in Kentucky, and she went to segregated schools, elementary, junior high school, and high school. And she talks about what that experience was. But she does share that going to segregated schools, and many of you may know this, is that they were the teachers that lived in the community, that knew her family, my grandparents, knew her siblings, and they told my mother, you can do and you can achieve and you can be all, even though we live in segregated times and segregated environments. I think about Pacolia Limley, who was my Sunday school teacher, and all that I learned from her. And I remember at 8 years of age, she had me reciting Langston Hughes' Life for Me Ain't Been No Crystal Staircase. And I still remember that from when I was 8 years old. Shirley Chisholm, first Congresswoman, first woman to run for president. Her career started in nursery school. Maybe you all know that. Also, she was a neighbor. We lived on the same block, President Street in Brooklyn, New York. So I grew up knowing Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm. Marian Wright Edelman, I met her in the summer before my senior year of college, and this was at the Children's Defense Fund. But I had also known about her for many years because she was a pioneer went to Yale Law School, and she was a classmate with my father's brother. And there are many others. I would just run through just a few more. Martha Robinson. When I had my first job out of grad school, Martha Robinson was a mother who had earned, she rode the school bus with her children. She volunteered in the classroom, the Head Start classroom. She earned her CDA credential, and there she was my assistant teacher. Now there I was, the center director, Head Start director. I was the lead teacher, 36 children every day. And I remember I learned so much from her. I had the book knowledge. I had lab school experience. But what I didn't have and what I didn't learn in my courses and even in the lab school experiences was about the relationships with the families, how critical important it is. And Martha Robinson taught me so much. It was so valuable to learn from her about how to really build relationships with families. I remember her saying, we have 36 children every day. You have to multiply it by 2 because children come with their families and we're interacting with at least 72 people every day. Other people, Karen Brunson Day, she was the CEO of the Council for Early Childhood Professional Recognition. She's the CEO for the National Black Child Development Institute. I met her at a conference many years ago. And when I was moving here from Cincinnati to Connecticut, she said to me, contact Dr. Sharon Lynn Kagan. Tell her I sent you. So I did that. And that was how I got to meet Dr. Sharon Lynn Kagan and had the honor of working with her on 2 longitudinal studies. One was at Yale, and it was the Cost, Quality, and Child Outcome Study. And then I worked with her at Teachers College on the using assessment to improve school readiness and Head Start quality. What a wonderful experience. But my first meeting with Dr. Kagan was actually through Jean Rustici, who I will mention in a few more minutes. And other people who have led the way, my sisters, my younger sisters, who I have learned so much from them as well. Leslie Jones Sessler being an advocate for children, a family educator, a consultant, a college instructor, and she's a homeschooling mom. She's an author and a speaker. My sister Jennifer, social policy advocate, racial and gender justice warrior, a lawyer, author, nonprofit CEO, and an on-air radio host and public speaker. I lift them up because I'm so proud of them, but I'm so blessed about how they have contributed to my life. And I hope that you all have people in your own families and in your own environments who are helping to lift you up on a daily basis. So I ask you to think about who's on your list, who has helped you along the way. Just a few more minutes and I will wrap up. 1 second, please. So again, as you think about your own stories, how you come to this work, do you celebrate yourselves? Do you celebrate the work that you are doing every day? And again, to think about the people, diverse people of color, women of color, the diversity of your families. Diversity is a strength. I don't understand why people, don't think that we should be celebrating, recognizing, lifting up diversity. We could speak about equity, we can speak about inclusion, but why is this not important enough? Why is this being dismantled? And those are conversations to have with the families and to make sure that in your own programs, you are still celebrating the diversity of everyone. And that includes you yourself, your colleagues. So how do we help families to be their children's first and most important teachers? How do we authentically partner with them, right? How do we make sure that we are moving together in this storm that we are living, So I said I would come back to Jean Rustici, your grandmother. I'm sorry, I can see Janet, you wrote my grandmothers on both sides. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. I'm going to wrap up, but I wanted to share a story real quickly. And give me 1 second, please. So I mentioned Jean Rustici. Do many of you know, do people remember Jean Rustici? Wonderful, wonderful woman. And she was the first person I met when I came to Connecticut with regard to working. And we worked together on the Cost, Quality, and Child Outcomes Project. But I just want to talk about the soul of Jean and the spirit that she had. I came to Connecticut. My son, Brian, was born 1 month and 1 day after getting here. And I was very eager to just spend time with him and my daughter, who at the time was 4. But I also knew that eventually I wanted to get back into the field. And that was when I reached out to Dr. Sherilyn Kagan, having been referred to her by Dr. Carol Brunson Day. So when I contacted Dr. Kagan, she said, I sent her my resume, I sent her my letter, cover letter, and she contacted me and she said, I want you to meet Jean Rustici. I called Jean Rustici, and she was in New Haven. I lived in Middletown. And Jean said, how soon can we meet? And I said, well, I have a baby, a newborn. I don't know when I can do this. And she said, no problem. I'll come to you. And as a young mother with this new baby, I thought, she is coming to me. And she said, don't worry, I will be there. And we met in the Russell Library in Middletown. Not only did we meet there, she said, bring your children with you. I brought them, and she held my son Brian while we met and while she explained the different opportunities for working with her and Dr. Sherilyn Kagan. So I give a shout out to Jean Rustici for all that she did. And if any of you knew, she was passionate. She was an amazing early childhood educator. She helped establish Head Start programs in Stanford. And I went and researched, I wanted to read her obituary, and I learned even more. Her mother started a daycare in her home during the Depression. Jean turned that into a highly regarded nursery school in Stanford that continued operation into the 1980s. And it says one of her proudest accomplishments was her involvement in establishing the original Head Start programs. She also worked at the Yale Bush Center of Child Development and worked with Dr. Kagan and worked with Dr. Ziegler. So I salute Jean Rustici today. I also salute, and some of you may know, Iris Hope Rich. Iris Hope Rich passed away January 2018, and she was the executive director of the Women's League Child Development Center. She was a fearless advocate. She was a warrior. She really uplifted early childhood education in Hartford, in the Hartford region. And one of my encounters with her was that, one of my dearest encounters was that she asked me to be the project director for the Children's Defense Fund's Summer Freedom School program that was hosted at her site in the summer of 2016. It was such an honor to be asked, and I had that position for 4 summers. Another thing that Iris Hope Rich asked me to do, which I love to do, I used to be a Zumba instructor. Any Zumba followers or dancers out there, any Zumba instructors? And what she did was she wanted her staff, so you all might get some ideas from this, she wanted to tune into her teachers and for them to have joy and, to take care of themselves, some self-care. So I think it was 1 day a week, definitely. It might have been twice a week. I would come and we would have Zumba dance classes after work, like from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. We would just dance. And did Iris Hope Rich, even Iris would join in the dancing every now and then. And one other person I want to salute is Mary Jane Newman. Mary Jane Newman was the director of the Mansfield Discovery Depot. And some of you may have known her. I read her obituary. She passed away in 2023. I had the honor of working with her because we taught several of the director's credential course, I may have the wrong title, that was offered by Connecticut Charts a Course. And we taught those courses together for about 3 years, family, child, and community. And Mary Jane Newman She was just this beautiful soul. She loved to laugh. She had this contagious laugh. And as I was reading her obituary, I did not know she was an accomplished circus performer. She traveled with her father's circus act, the Al Morgan family, in the 50s and 60s. How exciting is that, right? Uh, and Mary Jane Newman, this gave new meaning to my understanding of this amazing, wonderful woman. When you entered her class, her center, when you arrived at the Mansfield Discovery Depot, this huge sign was on the door, and the door said, "Fun," F-U-N in huge capital letters. Fun is mandatory here. So I give you those messages. I tell you their stories because these were women who were leaders, pioneers, who did such wonderful things for children and families. And I just hope you take something from their stories. Fun is mandatory, building relationships with the families, cultivating voices. But it's just so important that we think about who are the people that have nurtured us, who are the people who have watered us, and now who do we help to water? I'm going to close with the Children's Defense Fund's Freedom School. And it's the 6-month summer program, and it's based on the civil rights movement, and that when college students came from the North and went to the South, and they went there to help people of color, predominantly Black people of color, to get registered to vote. They learned that the children also needed support. So this was part of the beginning of the summer school, freedom summer school movement. And Ella Baker was a key pioneer. She helped to develop that program. And their motto is, "I can make a difference. I can make a difference." And they tell young children from preschool all the way through high school, you can make a difference. Now, it's a 6-week summer program. So every week they are learning how they can make a difference. The first week starts with, and I encourage you to think about this for yourselves. Oh, and let me also say, I said children preschool through grade 12. The very first day of the Summer Freedom School, they tell the children, you are scholars. You are scholars. Do our children hear that? Do the children in your programs hear that? Do the children in your communities hear that? The very first day the children learn, you are scholars. Preschoolers, okay? And they tell the parents as well, your children are scholars. So here's how they can make a difference. They begin the first week learning, I can make a difference for myself. I can make a difference for myself. Think about that for yourselves. How do you make a difference for yourselves, right? And there are all kinds of books that they're reading in week 1 that focuses on identity. Think about the anti-bias education goals, right? Identity is the first goal. And then the second week, I can make a difference for my family. So what are the contributions that you make to your family? And how do you help young children, scholars, to understand you can make a difference for your family? Week 3 is I can make a difference for my community. Week 4 is I can make a difference for my country. Week 5 is helping them understand I can make a difference for the world. Really, we all can, right? This is social studies, right? This is social studies that we're teaching young children in our programs. And then the last week, I can make a difference through hope, education, and action. And I think that is very, very important. I leave you with that because we can all make a difference through hope, education, and action. And in these times that we're living, where we're this boat, we have our individual boats that are rocking. We might all be in the ship together when you're in your classrooms, when you're in your centers. But remember, we can all make differences through hope, education, and action. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak with you. And I applaud the work that you all are doing. Thank you.
My Elsa, the thanks and appreciation goes to you. Thank you for such a meaningful, powerful, informative message. You can see the hearts, the emojis, the different reactions. Thank you so much for sharing of yourself and continuing to give of yourself in educating and inspiring generations of leaders. Thank you so very much, Elsa.
Thank you. Thank you. It's
Oh
an honor.
boy. Oh, the honor is all ours.
Thank
And
you.
with that, we will now move on to continue to hear words of inspiration, motivation, and insight. We now are going to hear a voice from the field, that being Georgia Goldburn. Passing it over to Georgia Story.
I'm Georgia Goldburn. I am the director of Hope for New Haven, which manages Hope Child Development Center. And I'm also the co-founder of Circle. And Circle was a vision of myself and Kim Harris from Harrison Tucker. Kim Harris, her family has been in this work for 50 years, and I started in college, actually, at Albertus Magnus College in the campus ministry. And that's where I started working with children. I came into childcare specifically to learn how to open my own center for older children, and fell in love with early care and education. And so it was very isolated when I came into early care and education. A lot of people didn't talk to each other, at least that was my experience. A lot of people were afraid to share with each other, but I had a few folks who reached out to me and supported me. And I faced a lot of, injustices in doing this work. I've been told things to my face that was highly offensive, and some of it was borderline racist, and some of it was just outright racist. And I made a promise to myself that if I could create a better environment for providers of color, and that's where I started, was providers of color, because I was experiencing this work as a woman of color, that I would lend my knowledge and my resources to support in existing and new providers of color. And so that started my advocacy journey in just making sure, one, got to know different providers. I understood that while I may be experiencing the system as a woman of color in a very unique way, there are some ways that all of our oppression basically span across racial, economic lines. And so I understood that as people of color, we're usually the canary in the coal mine. And so if I can solve the problem for us, then I can solve the problem. And when I say I can solve the problem, I mean collectively work to solve the problem. And if we're addressing the issues for the people who are the most vulnerable in the system, then we're fixing the system for every single person. So that's how my journey started, and that's what I am in the community, just that person that's saying, we want this system to be better for children, and we are experiencing this in a very unique way, but our experience eventually metastasized to affect everybody in the system. So how can we fix that? If we understand the history of childcare, and we will understand why the system that we have now is the way that it is and why it is so challenging. Childcare and agricultural labor was the main area for women of color, enslaved women. And so we know the history that Black women were, we have the issues of the mammies because Black women were the nurturers of their slave masters' children. So they cared for their slave masters' children. They breastfed them. A lot of times, and we've seen movies, more particularly like The Help is one of the more recent movies that just kind of highlight and exemplify how integral Black women were in raising white children in this country. What they had as skills were the skills that they used to continue to basically earn a paid profession. And Black women were specifically channeled back into the caregiving role, not just caregiving for seniors, but more specifically for children. If you look at the history of this country, a lot of people went into continue to do agricultural work or they did domestic labor, and Black women remained with domestic labor. And because they were also excluded from the economy of the country, Black women created what we would call today family childcare businesses in their home, because that was their way to make a living with the skills that they would be recognized for. And so that is really the evolution. That's the genesis of the childcare system. And so we have had to fight this. I mean, we say we collectively, we've had to fight to build those protections into this work. And so this, in a nutshell, is why we find ourselves in this particular place, because this work, childcare, originated out of freed Black women need to continue to earn a living, and policies and legislation was created to marginalize and disenfranchise those women. And as a result of that, the childcare industry became this really very factious industry with very little protection. The work that motivates me now is the work that has always motivated me, my love for children, spirit and their light. And I'm just like motivated every single day to honor and to protect and to make sure that that light, really shines brightly as they're growing. Now, as an early care educator, because I see how early care and education, intentional work around early care education does support that brain development and ensure that children will be lifelong learners. And the other part of what drives me is I'm a Jamaican woman, and I know when I came to this country how difficult it was for me in school and how not supported I felt in school. And so for me, knowing what it felt like as a child and hearing the stories of immigrant children talking about how difficult it was to integrate into this country, I think it's important with a country that is so multiracial, so diverse, multilingual, that we have to have those folks in the schools to support the culture, to support the country, to support the educational system. So for me, I am committed through Circle of two things: ensuring that we are responding in the moment, making sure that the classroom is reflective of the community where the children live and grow, but also honoring the history of what Black women have done to build this industry without any resource, making sure that that is not lost. And so part of my passion is to ensure that Black women who are the progenitors of the childcare industry have a meaningful role in today's time when we are partakers of those resources, that we are beneficiaries of those resources, and that our history and our legacy of building this industry, of caring for America's children throughout history, that is honored. So that's what drives me.
Yes, thank you, Georgia. Wow, what a powerful message in speaking truth to power. And with that, let us continue the conversation of truthful conversations, candid conversations by having our panel discussion. And we are so fortunate and honored to have our panel discussion to be facilitated by none other than Artie Hill. Artie is an education program manager at Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame. That is her formal title, but Artie is certainly someone who walks the talk, talks the walk, and does so with such inspiration and vigor. She's actively involved in her community in many, many, many ways. But what really speaks to the heart is that this topic is one that is very dear and near to her, and she will share more about that as she governs this conversation with our wonderful panelists that she will introduce. So at this time, passing it over to Artie Hill. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Lorna, for the invitation. I am feeling full right now with everything that has been shared today. Um, I want to be Elsa's best friend now. I was so inspired by her words and hearing her affirm the importance of child care providers and early childhood educators, and hearing her testimony about leaving her children with early childhood educators as well. It's so beautiful and was affirming to me. So as Lorna mentioned, I have worn many hats, and so to kind of go off of what Elsa was saying and how we got here today, as I share a little bit about myself and introduce our panel so that they can do the same. I am currently serving as the education program manager for the Connecticut Women's Hall of Fame. And in that role, as a part of my job, I take the stories of the 151 inductees that are in the hall, and I take those stories and go into classrooms all across the state to share with them the inspiring stories of those women, to inspire them to reach their limitless potential. And when we go into classrooms, of course, we're talking to girls and boys, but we definitely want to make sure that the girls know that they can be anything that they want to be. And I also like to say that we're educating the boys to be our allies. And so that is what I'm doing now, but I also work with youth with Connecticut Forum. I've been a parent educator with the Village. I've been on the board of Healthy Families Partnership back in Virginia, where I am from. I am very passionate about parent education and early childhood education. I basically was a stay-at-home mom for a very long time. And so since I pivoted, I was like, I need to learn everything I need to do to be the best parent possible, and just fell in love with that because, as you all know, parents are our children's first teachers, and we impact their lives in such a huge way. And if we're not at home raising them and we give them over to early childhood educators, it's so important the role that you play in their lives. And so I'm so grateful to be here today to celebrate you. I also want to introduce to you now members of our panel. The first person I want to introduce to you is Keo Bennett Gruyong, and she is with Early Head Start, and she's a member of the Staffed Family Child Care Network Education Network. Keo Bennett, would you like to come off of mute? And hello, please do tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us how you got into early childhood education.
Good afternoon. My name is Kevenet Gujon. I am thrilled to share my story as a family child care provider. By offering a high quality care to my families, I have built a reputation of excellence in nurturing and educating young children. Despite facing personal challenges, I have become a successful businesswoman, a dedicated mother, and a respected member of my community. I have achieved a accreditation for family child care, and I am a leader in my community, helping others achieve similar goals. My journey of determination and compassion and empowerment has led me to where I am now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm looking forward to talking with you a little bit more. Let's bring on Rhonda Knowles, who is also a member of the Staffed Family Child Care Network. Rhonda, please join us. Take yourself off of mute. Hello, hello.
Hello. How are
Hi,
you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm perfect today. It's an excellent
Fantastic.
day. Sun is shining, all is well.
Amen. Right?
I
Yes.
want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Rhonda Knowles, and I'm a home-based early educator. I've been in the child care field for about 33 years. I'm a member of the Family Child Care Staff Network. I'm a member, but I don't run it. And I actively participate in 7 different committees. One of them I especially is proud of is the apprenticeship program, which I co-chair with Commissioner Bai. This program supports home-based early educators to achieve their CDAs and their NAFC accreditation. I'm NAFC accredited myself. And additionally, I serve on the Professional Development Committee, which helps provide access to classes that advance the careers and enhance the quality of childcare providers. Our shared goal is to strive for high quality, childcare for ourselves and the families we serve. By expanding their knowledge, we can better support children in our communities. We want every child to feel loved, know they matter, and develop life skills that become responsible for them to be engaged as good citizens.
Yes, I love that part. Know that they are loved and that they
Yeah.
matter.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite things to do is to pop into a classroom and read to the babies. And when I do that, I like to ask them what their names are. And I ask them to make sure that they tell me exactly how it's pronounced. Because I have Artie up here, but my full name is Artisina. And Keo Bennett, I know that you can understand this, that there are many times when our names are misspelled. And our name, and this, and Elsa touched on this a little bit. Our name is one of the first things that we have and we own. And so I always like to make sure that I'm pronouncing it properly and to let them know that it's important that if someone doesn't say it properly, it's okay to correct them so that we can address them in their name accurately, because that's so respectful of children. And that's a way that we can show love to them. So, I want to ask you, let's go back to Keo Bennett. Tell me, I know that you've been in this field and you have to love it. You have to I know that you have chosen this and you pour your life into it. But just like any other job, there are lots of challenges, right? Can you tell us about some of the challenges you faced along your journey in this role?
Certainly. My journey has been marked by several challenges. One of the most significant has been the ongoing need to educate myself.
Yeah, that's really important.
Balancing the demands of managing my business, my personal life, and my professional development has required strong time management skills and resilience.
Yes.
If,
Self-care is very important, isn't
if
it?
you hear background noise, I'm working.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy workday to join us. Thank you so much. Yes, and we know, especially when we're being caregivers, teachers, early child care providers, nurses, it's so important. We're always loving and caring on other people. It's super important that we turn that mirror around and do that for ourselves, because we want to make sure that we are pouring into ourselves enough that we will be able to have enough to then pour into others, right? So that's so important, everyone. If you don't have a self-care routine, please get one. Make sure that you are exercising and lighting a candle, whatever you need to do to decompress from your day so that you're ready for the next day and that you can be your best self for the children. It's so important. Rhonda, do you have any challenges that you'd like to share on your journey?
Yes, I do. I think one of the most significant challenges that I face in my program is since COVID, I've noticed that the children are not as uh, good question. They have development delays. So many of them need extra support, particularly with speech and behavior. And I'm noticing now I have more special needs children that aren't being diagnosed by the pediatricians. And the parents are coming to me to ask, well, do you think that they're right with the milestones? And I have to say no. So I tell the parents to go back to the pediatricians and ask them to give them the development. There's a test that you can take. And if they take that test, I ask them to follow up by asking them to go to birth to 3. And it's very important you do all of this before they turn age 5 and go to kindergarten. So that's been a terrific challenge because reading their medical reports, that section of the physical is never filled out. So I have to send the parent back to the physician in order to take the test to make sure that they get the services that they need. So it's a challenge trying to give that child extra care, extra help while still taking care of the other children. And I think they've also fell behind because we wore a mask when it was COVID. Their speech is delayed. They cannot do phonics. They cannot articulate themselves because I hear a lot of mumbling. So it's been difficult. It's been difficult. And then it's the hours that we work. I achieved my NAFC accreditation. I'm a leader in the union. I was also a co-president of a network for 10 years to help family child care providers that didn't know anything about the business. We would meet in someone's basement. And I did that job for about 10 years, and we had 95 members. And back 30 years ago, there was no access. You went to the library for information. There wasn't an internet. There wasn't a computer. So you you read different articles, and then we had people from the United Way come and then give us workshops for free. So we grew so large, we went into a library. And now we had access to the books that were there. We had access to more information. We got links to go to different programs. And the providers really appreciated it because they came into the industry not knowing how to handle a business. I did exporting for 10 years. So I was in a male dominant field. So I know the business aspect of it. But like you had mentioned earlier, that's a male field. And I was the only woman of color in the whole department. So it was a little challenging, but I left the field because of my daughter. And I opened up my daycare because of my oldest daughter, because I just felt I was spending too much time away from her. So with working a 60 or 75-hour work week, you have to be dedicated to this field. You have to love this field because you're not in it for the money. You just have to really love this field. Yes. So I want the providers that I help through the CDAs, the NAFCs, through the union, through the network to just make a decent wage, a decent living, so they do not have to go out and get a second job. So they'll be able to spend time with their families. And as you mentioned, self-care. There is no time for self-care. But we went to a workshop, and I think what kind of stuck with me is the instructor said, you're on an airplane and you're having an accident. Who do you give that oxygen mask to? A lot of providers said, the children, save the children. And they said, well, if you don't put it on yourself, you can't save the children. You can't save the children. So that stuck with me I took that workshop 10 years ago and I've never forgotten it. We have to do self-care for ourselves so that we can help others.
Yes. Amen. Amen. I love a workshop, frankly. I learned something, even if it's a repeat of something, there's always a nugget. There's
Yes.
always something that you can learn. And any opportunity to have further education and to be able to learn more about your field, I encourage you to do it, because oftentimes I started taking parenting classes to try and be a better parent. Frankly, I learned more about myself than I did with being a better parent, because it really had me be introspective and understand that you either parent the way you were parented or you do a total 180. And it's really important to be intentional about what we're doing with our babies. Um, and this may have to be our last question because I know we're short on time, but I want to um, ask you, in spite of the ups and downs and the challenges that you've had in this field, we know that it's important work. And we thank you so much for the work that you're doing, because we know that, for those who want to work outside of the home and they want to also have a family, what are you going to do with the children? Like, they cannot be home by themselves. Someone has to take care of them. And it's really important to have peace of mind knowing that you're leaving your child with someone who cares for them as much as you would like them to think that you would care for them yourself, right? We know that we're not the parent, but I one of the hats that I wear, I'm also a caregiver on care.com, because between jobs, I was like, what am I gonna do? And my daughter said, Mom, you should take care of other people's kids because you did really well with us and you love all that parenting stuff. I was like, okay. And even though I'm working outside the home now, I still keep my account open because I only had to have strangers watch my kids twice. I always had family around me.
Mm.
And I know that that's not always the case for others. And I want to be of service to families who want to be able to trust someone to take care of their kids. Because there's
Exactly.
a lot of crazy people out here. So I
Yes,
thank you
there
for what
are.
you are doing. So, in terms of the ups and downs and all the challenges that you've had, tell me what keeps you motivated? What keeps you going in this line of work?
What keeps me going is I work with a lot of toddlers. Is seeing the smiles on their faces when they take the first step, when they sit in a high chair and they're feeding themselves, when they come over and they give you a hug, and when they tell you that I love you. It's like you could be having an awful day and they just do something or they say something that just makes you laugh, smile, feel good that you got up this morning to take care of them. And then I hope that I'm also nurturing them that they will become good citizens, that they will be kind. I have that all through my daycare to help your friend, to pick them up, to be nice, to speak kind words, to not be mean to others. And my kids in my daycare for the past 30 years have all done that. And to have a child that came here when they were 10 months old and come back when they're 18 or come back with their kids and say, Miss Rhonda, I love my mom can't make rice like you do because my family's from Barbados. But they go, my mom just can't cook like you do. And they go, do you still make homemade chicken soup? And they have a beard and a mustache. No one's been arrested. They've all gone on to be very, very good citizens. They're in college, they're in technical schools. They send me Christmas cards. They come by, they bring me gifts sometimes, and it just warms your heart.
That's fantastic because you're doing God's work. You really are. Keo Bennett, please, you will have the last word. Tell us what keeps you motivated. I don't think you've been in it for as long as me and Miss Rhonda. But tell me what keeps you motivated?
What motivates me on a day-to-day is the impact I have on both families and the child care workforce. By providing a high quality care, I enable parents to go to work, ensuring business can operate smoothly and the economy thrives. The relationships I build with children and their families, the progress I see in each child development, and the positive changes I bring to the community inspire me and keep me pushing forward.
Thank you. And we want you to keep pushing forward for many years to come because parents and their children, we need you. Thank you so much, both of you, for taking the time to join us today. I'm going to turn it back over to Lorna and the team. Thank you for this opportunity to facilitate the panel. I wish we had more time to talk with them, but I hope that you just got a taste of how important it is, what it is that you do, and just be encouraged that what you do is important, and we hope that you will be supported in that. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Artie. Artie, thank you so very much. Keo Bennett, thank you. And Rhonda, thank you so very much for sharing your words, clearly spoken from the heart. And it's so obvious the dedication you have in supporting so many children and families throughout Connecticut. Thank you all so very much for that. And want to thank all of the webinar participants in today's webinar. Certainly, thank you very much, Diana, for giving instructions on how to access interpretation. Paola and Martha with NWI, thank you for providing interpretation. Commissioner Beth Bai, so wonderful to see you, and thank you so very much for giving a warm welcome and informative and inspiring welcome remarks. Thank you so much, Commissioner Bai. And our keynote speaker, Elsa Jones. My, oh my, we continue to digest your wonderful words of wisdom. And I'm just reflecting on how you reminded us that we can all make a difference through hope, education, and action. Thank you so much for reminding us of the power that we have as well. Thank you so much, Elsa Jones. Georgia Goldburn, thank you for your video vignette message to us all. Thank you for your ongoing commitment to the community at large and reminding us to be truthful to who we are and where we are going. Thank you, Georgia. Our facilitator, Artie Hill, once again, thank you so much for facilitating a dynamic panel discussion. And of course, our wonderful panelists, Rhonda and Keo Bennett, you are wonderful and definitely essential to all the work that's been done. And thank you for reminding us of the importance of self-care in doing so. Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Keo Bennett. And also want to thank our teammates behind the scenes. Certainly, Jen Ide, thank you so much for helping to manage Zoom and all things related to Zoom, behind the scenes, and all of those pieces. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Jen. Want to thank Graphics by Jules, our team O'Donnell, and UConn School of Social Work Innovation Institute for collectively supporting with our video vignette editing, the webinar support recording, and the webinar surveys. With that, all of you, please do respond to the survey. You will receive a link right immediately after this webinar. And we ask for you please to give your feedback so we can learn from you what to do and how to improve and what thoughts you have and different suggestions moving forward with the webinars. So please do take the time to complete the survey. And with that, I certainly cannot ask you to do something without thanking you. Thank all of you who are participating in this webinar, whether you're viewing it live or watching a recording. We are so grateful to you for your attention, for your support, and all that you are doing to help support and raise our children. Your role is vital in this field. You help to support our field, and we can never underestimate the valuable role that each and every one of you plays. Bless you all. Thank you all so very much. And until we come together again, be well. Thank you.